So sick jokes are more popular with men than with women. Of course they are, that's true.
Nice to know me, thank you for that. First, though, we're asking if comedy needs censoring. Follows on from what we were talking about yesterday. Does every gag need to be scrutinised to see if it might cause offence? And if experts, whoever they may be, say a gag could upset people, well, then what do we do? Ban it? As we mentioned earlier, Alan Carr is the latest comic to fall foul of the tabloid fun police after jokingly dedicating his comedy award to Shannon Matthews' mother, Karen. I'll be honest, I wasn't offended. No one I know was upset, but the Daily Mirror still deemed Alan's comment front-page news. So, how many people have to be offended for a gag to be offensive? Only 2 people complained when Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross's phone call to Andrew Sachs was first broadcast on Radio 2. 2 people. After the Daily Mail got hold of the story, that number rose to 37,500. Julian Clary famously caused outrage at the Comedy Awards in '93 with a sexually explicit gag about then-Chancellor Norman Lamont. Out of an audience of 3 million, how many people complained? 12. He didn't work in TV for years after that. Are we losing our sense of humour? That's what I keep wondering. Are tabloid editors the best people to judge what's funny and what's not? That would be the same tabloids who used to honour the likes of Bernard Manning and Jim Davison, famous for their sexist, racist jokes. Now, Peter Kay famously caused upset about a gag about Jill Dando shortly after a murder. Harry Enfield reportedly had scrap plans to play a sex-crazed Muslim hoodie and a paedophile priest, lest he cause offence. And comedy, of course, is bound to cross the line every once in a while, but why are we so keen to gag comics in these enlightened times when, for hundreds of years, jesters would earn their living telling kings and queens uncomfortable truths? Have I had to cut material out of your act, Katie?
Have I ever had to? Not my live act, but yes. I mean, obviously everything I write for my TV show has to go through a couple of lawyers, and they decide what they think, and sometimes we have a bit of an argument. Sometimes they win and sometimes I win. But, yeah, sure, I mean, there's a sort of a degree of sort of... you have to be a bit grown up about it, but I mean, I don't think, certainly in a live form, I don't think any comedy at all should be censored. I think a comedian should be able to say whatever they like about anything they like.
What if that live event is televised? Does that change things?
Well, I don't think that really even falls on the comedian necessarily. I think that's to do with a comedian's job is to sort of find some sort of truth in experience and then try to make people laugh, and part of that is taking a risk. Now, it might be that the people in charge of the broadcast need to put in place things which then they decide whether it's appropriate to go out or not. But, you know, I remember I think it was Frank Skinner that said, you know, you could tell a joke about a chicken crossing a road and someone somewhere will have had a chicken who died crossing a road and they'll be offended. You know, you can't stop people sort of... Often comedy's very spontaneous, often it's sort of pushing at the bounds a little bit, and you have to let people do that.
Are you, from your position, as a well-respected and fast-rising comedy star, what do you think?
Thanks.
I mean, well, you are. I think you're doing brilliant work.
Thanks.
You're also working. You're not ploughing, or you don't seem to be going as in your face, or you don't seem to be setting out to test perhaps people's taste boundaries, perhaps as much as someone like Russell Brand is. Or what's your overview at the moment? Are you concerned by the amount of pressure that's being applied to comedians, or does Comedy's house need to be put in order?
I believe in self-regulation. I don't believe in censorship. I think, you know, Alan Carr should be able to say whatever he likes, and then if people don't find him funny or they're offended, they don't have to go to his gigs and they don't have to buy his DVDs. And so hopefully that will become a self-regulating thing.
Could you have used the same argument about Jim Davidson? Could you say it's fine for him to make racist jokes? People who don't want to listen to that don't have to go and see him.
Yes, you can, because look what's happened to Jim Davidson.
But I don't
happened to his career. People saw him on Hell's Kitchen.
He's incredibly unpopular.
I think, I'm anti-censorship, but I think that all people who broadcast have to be aware of the effect of what they say. And therefore you make a decision as a comic, how much controversy do I want to cause? You know if you're going to cause that controversy, and then you have to deal with the backlash, and that's down to you.
Well, that's exactly
but I do think
you do have to deal with the backlash.
There are lines that every comic draws. No comic these days would do a very obviously racist joke, because
well, just on the backlash front. Just on the backlash front, the bit that's really troubling me, and it's because of the Daily Mail and the way it sort of whipped up the complaints, is the backlash is what the tabloid newspapers decide is and isn't offensive.
That's true.
They're the ones that are setting.
But also, I think there's a problem at the moment, and I think part of the problem at the moment, which was all kicked off by Jonathan Ross, who I think is great, but who was paid a lot of money. We're in difficult times financially, and there is this sense, I think, from people and from the tabloids that there is some sort of sense of injustice, that some people in the world get to earn a living by what appears to be just messing around and having fun, and then are paid very well for that. And I think if then that there's a sort of anger or resentment that what is essentially appears to be a frivolous career is then very well rewarded in times when other people are sort of feeling the pinch a bit. And I'm not sort of supporting or sort of judging that. Sorry, that was probably...
But don't you think...
It's another festive snowflake biting the dust.
I mean, obviously, it's more direct than that. With a person like Jonathan Ross, it's not simply that he's earning a lot of money. He's being paid by our money. That's the issue. Therefore, I think somebody who is offended by Jonathan Ross, who pays their life...
Alan Carr, were you offended by the Alan Carr remark? I mean, is it worthy of front page news?
No, I wasn't offended, but I think he wouldn't have said it if he didn't think it was going to offend people. He said it to be controversial. He knew that was going to offend somebody.
I don't know about that. I've said things that are just off-the-cuff, flippant remarks, just without even really a second thought to what... And the thing is that often in the moment, people will laugh. Yeah. And then the next day, when a load of people who weren't even there, who weren't there in the moment... Yeah, exactly. It's a very subtle thing, comedy, particularly when it's live, that you judge the mood of a room, you say something in the room, everyone laughs. I think Stuart Lee said, you know, the thing about controversial comedy is the moment you laugh, you are complicit in the joke. The problem is the next day, when someone who isn't there, who didn't laugh, takes retrospective offence.
The Daily Mail, I had no idea about what Alan Carr said at the time, and yet then the Daily Mail goes, did you hear what he said? And the chances of offending so many more people are actually, you can lay that at the door of the Daily Mail, not Alan Carr, because they're the ones that choose to go, God, did you see that? Did you see that?
Every live performance you do, somebody may have a phone. Somebody may tape that and somebody will put that on the internet. So you have to be aware that, as a comic, that everything you do...
I am aware, but I choose not to care about that. I cannot live my life as a comedian being scared that there will be some sort of which... And, of course, I have to be responsible about things that I film in order to go on television within reason, but I'm not going to do a live gig worried that, retrospectively, someone's going to get angry.
Quick word from Matt.
I just think we should look at our comedians in a totally different light than the same light we look at politicians, because a joke is only meant to make you laugh. That's it. And it can be judged just on that basis alone. If it doesn't make you laugh, you've made your judgment and you won't go back to that
and also,
comic.
just quickly, I think that there is a problem at the moment where people seem to think that just because something is funny that it can't also be serious or truthful. Yeah. And in fact, you know, making a joke about something can be as insightful as us talking about something here. It's not automatically just because it's funny. It doesn't mean it's also sort of...
But it can also contribute, it can also be racist, it can also be sexist, can also contribute to a climate of bullying, and comics have to be aware of it. And you cannot say that any joke is acceptable. Some jokes are not acceptable.
OK.
But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be
allowed. I agree.
OK, let's throw it up to you guys. Comedies of errors, this could be called, really, isn't it? It's where do we feel that the boundaries should be drawn in comedy? Is it just down to self-censorship? Are we happy having the tabloids acting as some kind of fun police? Let's see what you have to say.
We've got some great calls, but we're going to start with Johnny first on line 1.